Those who arrive in compact cars are often considered budget-conscious customers. On my mother's 60th birthday, I wanted to make it special by taking her and my daughter to a renowned upscale restaurant that is notoriously difficult to book. However, our evening took an unexpected turn. The restaurant manager began making derogatory remarks, mocking us and insinuating that we were out of place. My mother, clearly upset, suggested we leave, but the manager just smirked. To her surprise, the other diners stood up in unison, glaring at the manager in disapproval. I'm Rebecca Miller, 28 years old, a single mother with a 3-year-old daughter. After separating from my husband due to differing values, I decided to raise my daughter alone. When I returned home to share the news, my mother welcomed us with open arms. Overwhelmed, I broke down in tears. Seeing my distress, my mother offered for us to move in with her. She had been living alone since my father passed away a few years ago, and she was delighted at the idea of having us. With my mother's 60th birthday approaching, I wanted to do something extraordinary. I managed to secure a reservation at the coveted restaurant, known for being booked years in advance. I was prepared for a long wait, but a cancellation allowed us to get a reservation for her birthday month. My mother was thrilled when I told her. Her reaction made all the effort worthwhile. The day of the reservation arrived, and I drove my mother and daughter to the restaurant, never anticipating any problems. Miss Rebecca Miller, is it? Please come this way, said the host. The grand entrance was fitting for such an exclusive venue, and my mother and I were in awe of the opulent decor while my daughter remained her usual cheerful self. Seeing my mother's delight, I felt confident that the evening would be perfect. After a brief wait, our appetizer arrived, a beautifully presented salad. Both my mother and I were excited, especially since the restaurant had a special menu for my daughter, a thoughtful touch. As we enjoyed our meal, my mother began recognizing some of the patrons. I know that person, she said, pointing out several celebrities she had seen on TV. I glanced around, noticing the same faces and feeling a part of this glamorous world. Everyone seemed to be enjoying my mother's and daughter's presence, and the approving looks from fellow diners reassured me about bringing my young child. The appetizers were finished, and the first main course was served, its elegant presentation adding to the evening's splendor. Instinctively, I pulled out my phone and took a photo. Almost immediately, a different staff member approached us. His displeased expression caught me off guard. "Excuse me, could you please refrain from taking photos?" he asked curtly. I apologized, trying to explain. I just wanted to capture the moment. His next words were laced with disdain. "This is typical of people like you. Why are you even here? Who let you in?" His muttered comment was clearly audible, making me feel deeply uncomfortable. I tried to hide my discomfort, looking down to avoid dampening my mother's mood. However, my daughter's sudden crying brought me back to the moment. She had dropped her bread on the floor, and her cries echoed in the quiet restaurant. People began to turn their attention toward us, and I panicked, attempting to calm her down. But the more frantic I became, the less effective my efforts were. The rude staff member from earlier approached again. "Ma'am, you're disturbing the other patrons with all this noise." "I'm so sorry," I said. "I'll calm her down right away." "You really shouldn't bring children to places like this," he retorted, his sarcasm unmistakable. My mother overheard this time. Clearly irritated, my mother spoke softly but firmly. "It's your attitude that's truly ruining the reputation of this establishment." Her comment only seemed to fuel his hostility. "This isn't a place for children, you know. If you continue to cause a scene, I might have to call security." His arrogance and rudeness made both my mother and me furious, but we knew that reacting with anger would only worsen the situation. Taking a deep breath, I tried to stay composed, determined not to let him see how deeply his behavior had affected us. I could hear my mother murmuring a similar apology. "I truly apologize for the disturbance. My daughter has stopped crying. Can we have a moment?" The staff member, arms crossed, stared at us, clearly waiting for us to make the next move. "Could you calm down? You're inconveniencing the other guests," he said sharply. To distract my daughter, I offered her some bread from my plate. She stopped crying and began eating happily. I let out a sigh of relief, shared a glance with my mom, and attempted another apology to the staff member before taking my seat, but he seemed even more agitated. "Do you even understand what I'm saying? I'm telling you to leave. This restaurant is too upscale for you." But my daughter has calmed down now, I protested. She might cry again. But we informed the restaurant about her when we made the reservation. So what? He snapped. This is exactly why people like you have such low standards. If you keep this up, I'll call the manager. The staff members stormed off towards the staff room, leaving my mother and me stunned. We couldn't believe how rude he was. Didn't he realize that his attitude was the real issue here? Despite it being a special celebration for my mother's 60th birthday, the experience was soured. Although I had caused a scene, I didn't want to escalate the situation further. As we considered our next steps, we exchanged worried looks, and soon the staff member returned with a man who appeared to be the manager. I couldn't help but gasp when I saw the manager. It was Daniel Thompson, a classmate from middle school. "Is that you, Rebecca?" Daniel recognized me instantly. The staff member, surprised, asked Daniel, "Do you know her?" A wave of relief washed over me. Daniel had always been earnest and cheerful in school, although he was a bit reserved and usually hung out with a smaller circle compared to my diverse group. I remembered him primarily because he had once confessed his feelings for me. At the time, I was in a relationship, so I had declined. Despite that, we'd still kept in touch a few times. I hoped that Daniel might address the staff member's rude behavior, but instead, he greeted me with a disheartening comment. "Oh, Rebecca, I didn't expect to see you here. Are you sure you belong in a place like this?" "What do you mean?" I asked, puzzled. "I heard the rumor," Daniel said, his tone dismissive. "You're a single mom now, right? People say single moms are usually struggling financially. This is a high-end restaurant. It would be a problem if you couldn't pay later." Daniel's mocking smile and unrestrained scrutiny were shocking. I remembered him as a kind person back in school, but he seemed to have changed significantly. "How can you say that?" I retorted. "I made a reservation and paid in advance." "You've always been so headstrong," Daniel said with a smirk. "Maybe that's why your husband left you. You need to know how to flatter people sometimes." "What does that have to do with anything?" I asked, bewildered. Daniel continued, his disdain evident. "Isn't that your compact car outside?" "So what if it is?" I replied, my irritation growing. Daniel chuckled derisively. "People who drive compact cars don't belong here. Didn't you notice when you parked? No one else drives a compact car. Everyone else has a Mercedes or something similar. Aren't you embarrassed to be so out of place?" His contempt was palpable. It was as if the Daniel I once knew was long gone. He assessed us with disdain and said, "You look downright poor. You clearly don't fit in here. If you understand the staff's concerns, why don't you just leave?" I felt my irritation rise as I was treated like we were causing trouble and refusing to leave. We had made a reservation and paid in advance. We had every right to dine there. I couldn't believe that Daniel, who used to be so kind, would now judge people based on their appearance. After everything he said, there was no reason for my mother and me to stay. The food might have been excellent, but we didn't want to be associated with a restaurant that had such disrespectful staff and a manager who had clearly changed. "Daniel, you've really changed. If this is how it's going to be, we're leaving," I said firmly. He seemed oddly satisfied. "I'm living the dream now," he said with a smirk. "I'm definitely better off than you. Don't think you can just call me by my first name." "It's a shame how much you've changed," I replied. Daniel's smirk widened. "That's because you rejected me back then. Even though you're not that pretty, I'm happier now. Isn't it refreshing?" He cheerfully high-fived a nearby staff member, and they both laughed. It was clear that Daniel still held a grudge from all those years ago. Understanding that made his awful attitude a little more comprehensible to me. "Say whatever you want," I said. "I'm certainly happier than someone who still harbors a grudge from the past. I have a wonderful daughter and a caring mother." Turning to my mom, I added, "Let's go." When I responded confidently, Daniel seemed to take pleasure in my irritation. He probably thought I was just being a sore loser. It frustrated me to no end, but shouting at him wouldn't change anything. I never imagined that a classmate could become so different. This day was supposed to end on a high note, but with these thoughts weighing on me, I picked up my daughter and glanced at my mom. She was clearly enraged and abruptly stood up. "You've made a mockery of my daughter. We don't want anything to do with a place like this. As you said, we're leaving," she declared loudly. Her words reverberated throughout the restaurant, and to her surprise, all the diners who had been enjoying their meals began to stand up and prepare to leave. I was stunned, unable to grasp what was happening. "Wait, what's going on?" I called out, bewildered. "I'm sorry for the disturbance. We'll handle these rude customers right away," Daniel said, trying desperately to prevent the diners from leaving. But his efforts were met with cold stares from every direction. Daniel was visibly flustered, not understanding the sudden turn of events. Two elderly men approached Daniel, shouting, "How dare you treat Mrs. Miller like that? We've been loyal customers for years, but will never return." Following the lead of the two men, the other diners began to voice their discontent and scold Daniel. They expressed their gratitude to my mother, who was still holding my daughter. It was clear that Daniel's behavior had backfired spectacularly. The entire restaurant was now united in their support of us. I stood there, wide-eyed, observing the extraordinary scene unfolding before me. The people who were reprimanding Daniel were recognizable celebrities, politicians, and other visibly affluent individuals. I had no idea why they seemed to feel a sense of loyalty to my mother. What's going on here? I wondered aloud, confused. Daniel's face turned ashen as he tried desperately to calm everyone down. The staff member beside him also appeared to be losing color. I looked at my mom with a puzzled expression, and she revealed an astonishing truth. All these people used to be regular customers of mine when I was a traditional sweets maker. What? I was as shocked as Daniel. I knew my mom had been a sweets maker, but I had no idea she had catered to such high-profile clients. One of the celebrities nearby spoke up. Mrs. Miller's sweets were the best in the country. My mom blushed at the compliment and replied modestly, "I may not be a professional craftsman anymore, but thanks to all of you, I became quite skilled. I'm truly grateful. In that sense, a customer is indeed a god." Hearing this, I felt a profound admiration for my mother. Daniel looked completely stunned, holding his breath and visibly tense. My mom approached the astonished Daniel and said calmly, "You need to learn to cherish your customers. This restaurant is important to you, isn't it?" At her words, Daniel's frustration boiled over, and he growled in response. Daniel was clearly on the defensive, trying to maintain a facade of confidence despite the situation. "Hey, stop this. What's with the customer is God nonsense? That's an outdated way of thinking and isn't popular anymore." His frustrated shout, which could be interpreted as a cry of anguish, reverberated through the room. My mom remained unperturbed by his outburst. "You think caring for the customer is just a fleeting trend?" she asked calmly. Daniel struggled to respond, clearly intimidated by my mother's firm stance. Still, he stubbornly refused to accept her perspective. "We're the ones providing the food," he argued. "We're more important than the customers. This is absurd. I am important. If your daughter Rebecca hadn't rejected me, I wouldn't have treated you this way. Apologize to me right now, and maybe I'll consider making Rebecca my partner. It could be a way out of your struggling life, don't you think?" He directed this last part at me, and I was utterly repulsed. I sighed deeply and said, "I'm sorry, but honestly, I can't deal with you right now." As I dismissed him and lowered my head, chuckles erupted from the crowd. Daniel's face flushed bright red. Despite how clear my response was, Daniel, with his misplaced confidence, seemed to be unprepared for another rejection. "Why not? I have money, you know. You don't want to be looked down upon, do you? And isn't it embarrassing to be a single mother? Women like you probably can't remarry, so I'm offering to take you." "It's none of your business," I said firmly. "Just because you have money doesn't guarantee happiness." I brushed him off, and his face turned even redder. I couldn't help but wonder if money was behind Daniel's transformation. They say that money can lead to one's downfall, but seeing it firsthand was a new experience for me. "How dare a single mother like you talk back to me?" Daniel's words no longer had any impact. In fact, after hearing my mother's dignified response, Daniel seemed pitiful. Suddenly, a loud voice boomed from the back of the restaurant, startling everyone. We all turned to find the source. A middle-aged man appeared, and Daniel's expression instantly shifted to one of unease. "Daniel, what on earth is going on here?" the man demanded. "Why is Dad here?" Daniel stammered. "I heard Mrs. Miller and her family were dining here, so I came to greet them," his father said, surveying the commotion. "What's with all this noise?" It became clear that the man was Daniel's father. I hadn't seen him since middle school, but he appeared very stern and dignified. Earlier, one of the staff had mentioned something about the boss, so it seemed this man must be the restaurant's owner. "Gave you the manager position after hearing you lost your job, but the business has only been declining. Now I understand why," his father said. disappointment evident. "What?" Daniel gasped. "Yes, I arrived a bit earlier," his father continued. "I overheard the commotion and saw you insulting Mrs. Miller's family. With all the arrogant things you've been saying, do you even realize how wonderful a person Mrs. Miller is?" As the boss interrogated him, Daniel's face grew pale, and he began to sweat profusely. "What? This old hag is supposed to be someone special?" Daniel sneered. "Watch your mouth," his father snapped back. "Mrs. Miller helped fund the opening of this restaurant." "What? This old lady has that kind of money?" Daniel scoffed. "Of course," his father replied sharply. "Mrs. Miller's husband owned a famous traditional candy store, and she herself worked tirelessly in the demanding world of candy making. She's experienced far more in life than you ever will. I wish I could distill her wisdom and let you experience just a fraction of it." With that, the owner turned to face us. "I'm deeply sorry for the trouble my foolish son has caused. Daniel, apologize now." "Why should I?" Daniel protested. "I'm the manager of this upscale restaurant. Didn't you trust my abilities enough to leave me in charge? This is my place, and I make the rules." "Enough with your arrogance," the owner cut him off. "What have I done, making someone like you the manager? I'm so disappointed in you. You're never setting foot in this place again." "What?" Daniel's jaw dropped in shock. In a panic, he started apologizing to his father, but the owner's decision was resolute. "You're apologizing to the wrong person," his father said firmly. "You should be apologizing to Mrs. Miller and her family." "Please, I'm so sorry," Daniel begged. "I finally made it, and I don't want to lose it all over something like this." Still going on about that, the owner shook his head in disbelief. His face was a picture of shock. No one would want to discover their child was so arrogant and disrespectful. If my own daughter had acted this way, I would have made the same decision as the owner. We all glared at Daniel, who was now visibly distressed. The owner began to recount how Daniel had ended up working at the restaurant. "Daniel used to work at a renowned hotel," he explained, "but he racked up massive debts from gambling. The chaos caused by debt collectors led to his firing. Lost and desperate, Daniel returned home and begged me for a job. At the time, I had been offered a promotion to CEO of the company." The story painted a clear picture of Daniel's downfall and reinforced the gravity of his behavior. So, Daniel's father decided to leave the upscale restaurant to his son and manage several other establishments in the same chain. At first, Daniel worked diligently, and the owner felt reassured. However, sales at Daniel's restaurant soon began to plummet. The owner had been trying to understand the cause of the decline for some time. Complaints about Daniel's poor attitude from the staff kept surfacing, but without concrete evidence, he wanted to believe in his son's abilities. Today, his hope had turned to certainty. "It's truly a shame," the owner said, looking at Daniel with deep disappointment. Daniel, who looked as though he had been struck by lightning, began to apologize frantically. "Dad, please forgive me. I've been trying my best, haven't I? Rebecca, please say something to my dad for me." "What exactly should I say?" I asked, my voice cold. "We were classmates, remember? For old time's sake." "You're really something," I continued. "You truly are the worst." Daniel's face fell further as he absorbed the disdain in my words. Both my mother and I sighed, taken aback by the turn of events. After the confrontation, Daniel was dismissed from his position as manager and disowned by his father, leaving him without a place to go. It later came to light that Daniel had accumulated new, hidden debts. Despite his decent salary, he had squandered most of it on gambling and mistreated his staff daily. He had a particular favorite among the staff, one who was also a former college junior of Daniel's. This staff member, who had a problematic attitude, was hired on Daniel's orders. Eventually, he was dismissed along with Daniel. With everything lost, Daniel sank further into gambling to escape his troubles, struggling to pay off his debts. His actions had not only ruined my mother's 60th birthday celebration, but also showcased his lack of integrity. To make amends, Daniel's father arranged a party for us at a hotel he owned, offering a free room as an apology. At the party, I made many new friends and realized just how much people cherished my mother. Everyone there had known her from her days as a traditional sweets maker, coming to her shop to buy her confections as gifts. Her enduring connections were a testament to her charm and kindness. I hope to follow in her footsteps and become the kind of mother my daughter looks up to with the same admiration. That was the mantra my parents repeated after I graduated high school, planning to work me to the bone. The thought of living that way for the rest of my life was unbearable. I was determined to escape, no matter the cost. I had no idea then how drastically my choices would alter my future. My name is Fiona, and I'm 40 years old. I work and live at a hotel owned by my Uncle Henry. We're not just a part-timer. I'm the front office manager. It's been over 20 years since I first set foot in this hotel, all because of an event I'd rather forget. Today, I want to share that story with you. I grew up in a typical rural town. My father worked in an office, and my mother managed our home. We were an ordinary family, filled with love and care like any other. But everything changed with the birth of my younger brother, who was born 10 years after me. At last, our family had a boy. Our future seemed secure. My parents were overjoyed. Dad's family home was just an average house, not linked to any particular business. In our rural community, boys were still preferred. Girls were seen as temporary investments. Eventually, they'd leave home, while a boy would stay and bring home a hard-working wife. It didn't take long for them to start neglecting me. I was thrilled to have a little brother, and with being 10 years older, maternal instincts kicked in. I wanted to take care of him. But my parents warned me sternly, "Don't get too close to him. Who knows what you might do to our precious boy?" They would leave cheerfully, leaving me behind. Daniel, as they named him, quickly became the center of their world, adored far more than they ever had cared for me. "Let's get dressed, Daniel, and go out. Today we'll buy you anything you want," they would say with enthusiasm, while I was left behind. "Fiona, you stay and do the chores, clean, do the laundry, and prepare dinner. You're not as endearing as Daniel." With those words echoing in my mind, I desperately sought their approval. I followed their instructions meticulously, trying to be the perfect daughter in hopes of winning their affection. But no matter how hard I tried, their love never returned to me. Daniel was showered with games, clothes, and toys without end, and my parents indulged him endlessly. Then, a new revelation came to light. Daniel is exceptionally smart, like a gifted child. They discovered he was highly intelligent, with exceptional abilities. According to Mom, a medical checkup revealed his IQ was above average for his age. "He is a genius. We've suspected it since birth," they boasted. "Indeed, you are our child. We look forward to your future." My parents' devotion to Daniel only grew stronger. Their indulgence reached new heights as they took him on trips to stimulate his curiosity and spent lavishly on his education. The money poured into Daniel's upbringing far exceeded what a regular salary family could manage. Our finances were quickly drained and poverty set in. In their quest to provide him with the best possible learning environment, my parents borrowed heavily from relatives and friends. By the time I was graduating high school, the worst was yet to come. "You don't need an education, do you? Once you finish high school, start working and earning money," they told me bluntly. I had never imagined that my own college dreams would be sacrificed for Daniel's education. I was eager to go to college and study, but my parents were enraged by my aspirations. "Our family isn't wealthy enough to waste money on someone useless like you. Your grades aren't even that great, so don't be selfish. Investing in Daniel is clearly a much better choice than spending money on you." Despite my desperate pleas, my parents' decision was final. "We have no use for someone who doesn't contribute. Our priority is all that matters." Their words crushed my spirit. I felt like an unwanted child. That day, I cried bitterly, cursing my unjust fate. In the midst of my tears, I remembered Uncle Henry's hotel, a place we had often visited before Daniel was born, when I was still loved and cherished by my parents. With those memories in mind, I decided to go to Henry's hotel. "Is that you?" Henry and Jennifer, who were cleaning the front entrance, hurried over when they saw me. Overwhelmed by relief and shame, I broke down in tears. They listened patiently as I recounted my story. After I had finished, Henry said, "I'm sorry you've had such a hard time, Fiona. Why don't you come work here? We're always short on staff. If you don't want to stay at home, you can work with us." Henry smiled and immediately contacted my parents. "I'll take care of Fiona from now on. You can do as you wish with her." "Fine, use her however you want. Just make sure to send us the money," they responded. "Understood, but as an apprentice to earn $600, that's the most I can offer." $600? That's far too low. "Look, I'm not doing this as a favor. I'm hiring someone with no experience. She'll be living and working here, so we'll cover her board and lodging. After those deductions, $600 is fair. It's not charity. Henry's tone was firmer than usual. I worried I might be entering a difficult situation. Was his reassuring smile merely a facade? Despite my hopes that my parents would object to the terms, they agreed. Fine. We need the money anyway, but make sure you draw up a contract stating that she won't complain about our arrangements. And so, I ended up working with Henry and Jennifer. Don't worry, Fiona, Henry said with a reassuring smile. Everything will be fine now. But I wasn't ready to dive straight into work. I still wanted to go to college. Of course you can, Henry assured me. How about making studying and enjoying college life your job here? Jennifer suggested. Is that really a job though? I asked, filled with uncertainty. Jennifer nodded in agreement with Henry. Yes, you'll have plenty of time for work when you're older. For now, enjoy being young. So, after graduating high school, I enrolled in college and helped out at the hotel during breaks. Fiona, you're so talented. Why don't you try some crafts? Henry offered. Really? I'd love to, I responded eagerly. And tonight, we're having steak for dinner. You like that, right? Jennifer added. Really? That's awesome, I said with a smile. Henry and Jennifer, who had no children of their own, treated me as if I were their own. After graduating from college, I decided to continue working at Henry's hotel. You don't have to feel obligated to stay here. There are other places you could work, Henry said. No, I love this hotel. I want to work here and learn more than I could at any other company, I replied. Henry and Jennifer were deeply touched by my words. The hardships I faced with my biological parents seemed distant compared to the happiness I found at the hotel. As an employee, Henry and Jennifer became like family to me, and I appreciated being valued as an individual despite the challenges. 10 years had passed since I first arrived at Henry's hotel. I wondered how Daniel must be doing in high school now. As I reminisced about the past, I continued cleaning the guest rooms. Suddenly, I heard a familiar voice. Hey, what's going on here? I turned to see my parents, whom I hadn't seen in a long time. Where's the money? We haven't received this month's payment. What's going on? Where is she? She's supposed to be working properly, right? My parents demanded, confronting Henry and Jennifer. Come inside, Henry said with an unusually stern expression while Jennifer looked at my parents with icy disdain. The five of us, my parents, Henry, Jennifer, and I, sat down for a discussion. My father was the first to speak. What's this about? Fiona's salary should be sent monthly. Why hasn't it been done this month? We need that money. Daniel is starting college next month. How are we supposed to pay for it without that money? Don't worry about it. Is Daniel attending a private university? I felt a bit detached from their conversation. Remember the agreement. You promised not to interfere with our employees' matters, Henry said firmly. That's absurd. Fiona is our daughter, my father retorted. It's quite something for you to say that after neglecting her for 10 years and only caring about the money, Jennifer responded coldly. But their concerns remained focused solely on financial matters, as if on repeat. Just give us the money. Do you have any idea how expensive college is? Calm down. Daniel will be working at the hotel starting next month, Henry announced. What? Even I was taken aback by this news. Why is Daniel going to work here? My parents asked in confusion. I received a call from him last month. He was eager to work here, so he sent his resume and we conducted a phone interview. He impressed us, so we hired him on the spot, Henry explained with a smile. Hold on a minute. What do you mean? We don't approve of this without our consent, my parents protested. That's precisely why we're glad you're here. Please sign here to approve, Jennifer said, holding out a document. What? It dawned on me. Henry and Jennifer had anticipated that my parents wouldn't come unless it seemed like their own idea, so they had manipulated the situation to ensure their presence. Initially, the money was sent to you at Fiona's request to prevent Daniel from facing hardship. But now that Daniel is willing to work here, there's no need for those payments anymore. That's why we stopped the transfers, Henry explained. I had no knowledge of this arrangement, as I had left all financial matters related to sending money in Henry and Jennifer's hands. I won't accept this. Daniel is exceptional. He's not like those who are useless without a college degree, Dad exclaimed, pointing at me. Not attending college? What are you talking about? Fiona graduated from a state university, Jennifer said. A state university? When did you? I began to explain. I've already graduated and am working here at the hotel. What? I was speaking to my parents for the first time in nearly a decade when another guest entered. I'm living here from today, Daniel announced, clad in his hotel uniform. Daniel. Mom covered her face in disbelief. Daniel, you look great. Is the uniform fitting well? It's fine. I look forward to working with you, Daniel replied, bowing to Jennifer. Mom tearfully confronted Daniel. Daniel, you're a smart boy. You shouldn't be doing this kind of hospitality work meant for anyone. You're destined for more dignified work. I'm not smart. I had poor grades in high school, according to Dad and Mom. Doesn't that make me useless? No, we never meant that. You used those words to keep Fiona from going to college. Then I surely don't deserve to go, right? But nowadays, not going to college is considered embarrassing. As parents, you've embarrassed your own daughter by preventing her from pursuing her education. How does that reflect on you? We believed in your potential and invested heavily in you. That was never my request, Daniel replied. Each of my parents' words was swiftly turned back on them by Daniel's sharp wit. He's too quick, I thought, his responses more adept than a seasoned comedian. As my parents stood speechless, Henry added, You see, the kids have grown far beyond what you imagined. Mom countered, But what about the 18 years we spent raising him? Look at everything we've done for him. Daniel shot back, The same could be said for Fiona. Consider how much she suffered because of your selfishness. Bravo, I thought, grateful to Daniel for articulating everything I wanted to say. I couldn't have expressed it so effectively myself. I'm leaving home, Daniel declared. If you don't sign the approval, I'll reveal everything you've done to Fiona to everyone. Rumors spread quickly in the countryside, and I doubt you'd want that, Jennifer said, her smile devoid of warmth. The countryside is indeed unforgiving. Everyone knows each other, and rumors spread like wildfire. Bad rumors, especially, can turn into real calamities, I added. They were well aware of this, having lived in the rural area themselves. Let's avoid making more noise than necessary. Please leave, Jennifer said, her smile dismissive as she ushered them out. I stood protectively in front of Daniel, ready to shield him. From now on, please leave your child to us. I, too, managed to smile as I saw them off. Unbeknownst to her parents, I had been meeting with Daniel in secret since I left home. Sneaking around to see him without our parents' knowledge had been quite a challenge. I was concerned about Daniel growing up in such an abnormal environment. As he got older, he began to recognize the issues within our family. Despite everything, we had forged a sibling bond in secret. That was quite the comeback, Daniel. Well done, I said with a smile. And Daniel replied, That was all part of the script from Henry. I just added a bit of my own improvisation. Maybe you're cut out for acting, I suggested as he prepared to leave. Are you really going to work here instead of going to college? I asked. Well, I'm not great at studying and my grades weren't the best, so I decided to work here instead, he explained. Do you have a specific goal? What do you want to do, Daniel? I want to become a chef. That's why I'd asked Henry to hire me so I could learn cooking here. Ah, that makes sense. If cooking is your main interest, I know of a culinary school about 50 miles from here. Would you like to go there? But school is expensive, and I don't have the money, Daniel replied. Don't worry, leave it to me, I said, pulling out my mobile phone to show Daniel my bank statement. Where did you get all this money? That's what I've saved over the last 10 years, I explained. I want you to use it. I've been saving a bit for my part-time jobs and hotel salary since college, anticipating a moment like this. Let me do something clever for once, I said with a smile, tapping my chest. Daniel's eyes filled with tears as he looked at the statement. He passed the entrance exam and was admitted to the culinary school, where he lived in a dormitory due to the distance from the hotel. After graduating, we traveled together, sampling dishes at various restaurants. Now, he's the chef and owner of a restaurant specializing in creative cuisine. He's truly the talented Daniel I always knew, excelling not just in cooking but also in business management and consulting. He seems to relish the daily challenges of his work and occasionally returns to the hotel to discuss cooking and new business strategies with Henry and Jennifer. One day, I'd like to return to this hotel after gaining more experience, Daniel said. Since then, my parents, shamed by their children's departure and exposed by neighborhood gossip, have fled their home. Who leaked the information? The house had become toxic. It's best to stay away from it. Selling their children was reprehensible. I want nothing to do with them. The house is now considered hazardous and they live in isolation quietly somewhere else. Occasionally, they contact Henry and Jennifer, hoping to hear from or see their children. "You don't have children. We're taking care of them," Henry would say. "No, but they firmly rejected us," my parents would reply. As for me, I continue to work diligently every day as the front office manager. Recently, Henry and Jennifer made me an intriguing offer. "How about eventually taking over the hotel?" Henry proposed. "We know it's a demanding job, but we believe Fiona can handle it." "Hotel manager?" Jennifer asked, visibly aged and clearly looking forward to retiring and enjoying the rest of their lives. "I understand. I'll do my best to repay your kindness," I replied without hesitation. "I'll need to stay calm and composed, considering I'll be the hotel manager one day. It's been a challenging journey, but now each day feels fulfilling. I used to live carefully to avoid upsetting my parents, but now I'm here, instructing employees to greet customers with enthusiasm and cheer. Life is truly unpredictable. Whenever I see you, you always look so vibrant and full of energy. What's your secret?" customers sometimes ask. To this, I always reply, "Perhaps it's about living each day with dedication." Foreign. "I'm struggling with debt right now. If you get married, we can pay off the debt with the wedding contribution from your spouse's family. You're 18 now, old enough to marry. Marry Freddie." In other words, I was being told to marry Freddie, an overweight man, all for financial gain. For a moment, it seemed utterly unreasonable. But then I realized I had only two choices: either drown in debt by refusing to marry, or spend my life with Freddie. As these options swirled in my mind, I remembered something: anything to get me out of this house. The story begins over a decade ago. My name is Felicity. Growing up, I was treated terribly by my parents. My father died in a car accident when I was 3. He was a very kind man, but Mom apparently didn't care for him much. I have no memories of being loved by her, probably because I resembled my father. Mom remarried just 6 months after my father's death. According to her, she had been involved with my adoptive father even when my father was alive. Mom and my adoptive father, who had betrayed my kind father, treated me horribly. I was treated as if I didn't exist, and my pleas were always ignored. It seemed to get worse after my sister Olivia was born. While Mom and my adoptive father adored Olivia, I was always the outcast. They did give me birthday presents each year, but they were small, pencils or erasers, while Olivia got everything she wanted. Even at Christmas, Santa Claus never visited me. As a child, I often cried alone, hugging my knees, believing Santa didn't come because I was a bad child. During those painful days, something happened. I was 7 years old and a hurricane was pouring heavy rain. Olivia had a fever, and my parents, who doted on her, were in a panic. My adoptive father told me to fetch a sports drink for Olivia. Reluctantly, I ventured out into the torrential rain, wearing a raincoat. My small body struggled against the fierce wind and relentless downpour. Our house was in the countryside, and it took an hour to reach the nearest supermarket on my tiny legs. When I finally arrived, drenched and exhausted, I was horrified to find that I couldn't locate the wallet I thought I had brought. I might have dropped it when the wind knocked me down. Tears welled in my eyes as I considered turning back, but then I heard a voice. "Wait a minute." A high school student, who appeared to be my older brother, said kindly, "Are you alone? It's dangerous out here." I burst into tears at his gentle demeanor and explained my situation. Desperately, I told him about my sister's fever and how my parents had sent me out to shop. The older brother seemed to understand my plight. "You don't need to worry about your wallet," he said kindly. "I'll help you with the shopping." He assisted me with all my purchases. Despite losing my wallet and being unable to pay a single dollar, he reassured me not to worry and even gave me the change I needed. He also took me close to home in a taxi. For the first time in a long while, I felt the warmth of kindness from a stranger. "Thank you, big brother," I said from the bottom of my heart as I exited the taxi. His gentle smile left a lasting impression on me. Having endured such a childhood, I turned 18. As a child, I was always constrained by being treated differently from my sister. Now, as an 11th grader, my primary issue was money. Mom and my adoptive father were initially against me going to high school, deeming it a waste of money. But I insisted on continuing my education under the condition that I would contribute $1,000 to the family each month. The money I earned from part-time jobs barely covered living expenses. As an 11th grader, I had to balance studying for college entrance exams with my part-time job, and I was constantly busy. Mom and my adoptive father probably wouldn't fund my college education, so I dedicated all my time to working and studying to secure a scholarship. One day, Olivia, now in the 8th grade, came home beaming with excitement. Listen, I got scouted by the entertainment industry. She proudly placed a business card from an entertainment company on the dining table. Mom and my adoptive father were thrilled. Olivia is so cute, they said. We're delighted she's been noticed. She has such a sparkle. Having a daughter become a celebrity is amazing. You're nothing like your big sister, but that's just fine. I was always much cuter than my older sister Olivia, yet our parents, who had always looked down on me and showered Olivia with praise, compared us at every opportunity. This time, Olivia arrogantly asked, "You think so too, don't you, big sister?" I replied with a resigned yes, knowing that arguing would only lead to more trouble. Olivia was supposed to join the entertainment industry, but months passed with no word from her. Our parents, initially puzzled by the constant charges for lessons and membership fees, eventually discovered that the entertainment agency was a scam and had vanished, leaving them with a debt of $20,000. While our parents were frantic, I calmly paid my monthly contribution of $1,000 and focused on my studies. I was determined to escape this house by any means necessary. With that goal in mind, I threw myself into my part-time job and studies. A few weeks later, as I came home, I heard an unfamiliar voice coming from the living room. Curious, I was about to head up to my room when I heard my adoptive father call for me. I peeked into the living room and saw two unfamiliar men with him. One was about the same age as my adoptive father, and the other was a very large man, sweating despite the air-conditioned room. My adoptive father introduced them. "This is Mr. Newell. Say hello." "Ah, nice to meet you," I said hesitantly. The two men smiled and looked at me. Mr. Newell was a well-known, prominent landowner in the area. I wondered what such important people were doing in our house. As if reading my thoughts, my adoptive father made an outrageous announcement. "Mr. Newell's son, Freddie, is your fiancé. Be polite." Startled, I raised my voice, prompting my adoptive father to look flustered as he pulled me into the hallway. "What's going on?" I demanded. He spoke in a hurried whisper. "We're in serious debt. If you marry Freddie, we can pay off the debt with the wedding contribution from his family. You're 18 now and can marry. You need to marry Freddie." In other words, I was being told to marry that overweight man, Freddie, purely for financial reasons. At first, it seemed utterly unreasonable, but I soon realized I had only two choices: accept the marriage and live with Freddie, or refuse and face a future of crushing debt. The thought of escaping this house was all-consuming. "Are you finished?" Mr. Newell, who had been waiting in the living room, asked anxiously. "Will you marry our Freddie?" With a forced smile, I replied, "Yes, gladly." So, that very day, I was to marry Freddie. I was told to move into Freddie's house immediately and was sent out with only my study materials. Freddie, noticing my lack of belongings, asked, "Don't you have any clothes or anything?" I had never owned any cute clothes, so I simply said, "That's all I have." Freddie's eyebrows furrowed in concern. Mr. Newell, my father-in-law, was a well-known landowner whose name I recognized, but he was very friendly. His car drove through a large gate and into a sprawling estate before stopping in front of a solitary house. "This is a separate house I built for Freddie when he married," Mr. Newell explained. "Since Freddie couldn't find a spouse until now, I'm glad someone as wonderful as Felicity is marrying him." He briefly explained the arrangement and then said, "I'll leave it to the young couple now," before leaving Freddie and me alone. Suddenly, I was alone with Freddie, facing an uncertain future. I felt a bit wary of Freddie, but he calmly showed me around the separate house. As he led me to a spacious room furnished with comfortable furniture, he said, "This is your room, Felicity. The lock works from the inside, and if you're worried, don't hesitate to ask for a key change. I promise I won't lay a finger on you." He continued, "I've informed your parents that we'll cover your high school expenses, so you can reduce your part-time job hours if you can. If you want to go to college, I'll support that too." I was taken aback by Freddie's unexpectedly considerate treatment. He even mentioned that he had no intention of getting a marriage license, suggesting that we have a common-law marriage. He added that if I found another man I liked, I was free to pursue that relationship. Surprised by how much this arrangement exceeded my expectations, I couldn't help but ask, what's the purpose of this marriage? It seems like I'm the only one benefiting from this. I wondered if it was rude to ask, but thought it was better to clarify now rather than face potential complications later. Freddie paused for a moment before beginning. I might be meddling, but do you remember the day of the hurricane when you went shopping as a child? We met then. Do you remember? I was stunned. How could I forget? I still vividly remembered the kind older brother from that day. It dawned on me that if that older brother had gained weight, he might look like Freddie now. Are you the older brother from that time? I asked, feeling a rush of apology. I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize you, Freddie admitted with a chuckle. I've put on a lot of weight since then. Stress from working full-time made me eat too much. But you haven't changed, Felicity. When my dad showed me your picture and asked if I wanted to marry you, I knew right away it was you. Are you still being treated poorly and suffering like you were back on the day of the hurricane? Freddie's words were as kind as they had been that day, and I nodded, feeling a deep sense of relief. Freddie smiled warmly and reassured me. It's okay now. You don't have to worry about money or being treated badly anymore. You can live freely in this house. Touched by Freddie's kindness, tears welled up in my eyes. Freddie quickly handed me a beautiful handkerchief as I cried, and from that day on, we started living together. For the first time, I had the freedom to focus on my studies without the constant pressure of financial worries. Freddie mentioned he didn't need any living expenses from me, but I decided to contribute $300 anyway, as living for free felt a bit restrictive. With only that small contribution and my allowance, I was able to significantly reduce my part-time job hours. Freddie took the initiative with household chores, and whenever I was busy studying, he would kindly say, "You can go study, I'll take care of this." In the happiest days of my life, Freddie and I grew closer, living like a regular married couple. We enjoyed each other's company, laughing together while watching variety shows and spending holidays out. A few months later, while I was leading this calm and contented life, I received a phone call from my adoptive father. I wondered what he could want now, after having ignored me for so long. I answered the phone with a sinking feeling. "Hello, Felicity, is that you? Mom's in serious trouble." The urgency in my adoptive father's voice took me aback. According to him, Mom had fallen ill and needed immediate surgery. He was asking me to transfer $10,000 to a specified account. Despite the neglect I had endured from Mom throughout my childhood, she was still my mother. I couldn't ignore her in a life-threatening situation. What happened all of a sudden? Which hospital is she at? What kind of illness does she have? I asked, trying to get more details. There was a noticeable hesitation in my adoptive father's voice. Well, it's the hospital, but..." His flustered response set off alarm bells. He couldn't even name the illness, which seemed highly suspicious. "You're lying, aren't you? Enough with these games. Don't call me with such nonsense." "Wait, okay, I admit it, I lied. The truth is, I had an accident recently and I'm being billed $10,000. He explained that he had crashed his car and the person he hit was a dangerous individual. Now he faced $10,000 in repair and medical bills and claimed he couldn't afford it. My irritation with him grew. "You're probably lying again." "It's true this time, I swear. Please, Felicity, ask Freddie to transfer the $10,000. You're all we have left." I snapped at my adoptive father's desperate plea. "Don't mess with me. I can't believe you called after all this time just to ask for money. Neither you nor Mom ever cared about me, not even once. And now you want me to help you. That's too convenient. No matter what you say, I have no intention of transferring the money. Goodbye." Ignoring his pleas for me to wait, I hung up and blocked the numbers of my adoptive father, Mom, and Olivia. A few weeks later, as I happened to pass by my family's old house, I noticed it was vacant. A gossip-loving neighbor approached me, revealing that the story about hitting a dangerous individual's car was true. According to her, my parents and Olivia had secretly packed their bags and left the house at night. They must have fled and were likely living under the radar now. Living in constant fear must have been incredibly stifling, but I felt a deep sense of relief. Meanwhile, I was living my happiest days. I had completely fallen in love with Freddie. Although he was 10 years older than me, he had been hesitant about dating me. However, my persistent confessions led to us deciding to start dating once I graduated from high school. Freddie even took time off work to attend my graduation ceremony. As Freddie joined me in improving my eating and exercise habits, he slimmed down to his original figure and transformed into a handsome man. My friends were envious when I proudly introduced him as my boyfriend. After graduation, Freddie and I officially registered our marriage. When I expressed my desire to marry him, Freddie agreed, and we submitted the marriage registration. Although it would take some time for the marriage certificate to be issued, we were now officially married, not just in a common law sense. On the way home from the city hall, we held hands for the first time. I laughed at Freddie's adorable shyness, and he said, "Now that you're my wife, Felicity, you can be swayed by any handsome boys you meet in college." I thought I was the only one in love, but it seemed Freddie loved me just as much. I found it so endearing that I burst into laughter. There was no way that could happen. Of all the people I've met, Freddie is the most handsome. "Excuse me, you're in the way. Please move." "Alright then, what's my name?" "Kane. I'm a sophomore in college, just wrapped up my general education courses. Majoring in economics and gearing up for specialized subjects next year. Job hunting looms. And I'm weighing grad school too. My parents are supportive, giving me the freedom to choose my path, thanks to our solid financial footing. Dad's success in business means we've never struggled financially, and I'm truly grateful for that. Once I land a job, I'm eager to repay their generosity. But despite outward appearances, I've got my own challenges. It's about my brother and his wife. Rick, my older brother by 10 years, and I have never really clicked. Despite what others say about opposite gender siblings with a significant age gap not being close, Rick and I have always conversed plenty. Yet closeness eludes us. "Hey Kane, could you run out and grab some comics for me and pick up a notebook for studying? Use your own allowance, of course. Oh, and grab a drink too." I've been running these errands for him for years. When our parents were around, they'd sometimes intervene, but with both of them working, I mostly just went along out of fear. Even now that I'm an adult, this dynamic hasn't changed. It feels like it's only gotten worse. The tipping point came last year when Rick married Stacy, who's the same age as him. Stacy's attractive, but she's also pretty distant. I didn't warm to her from the start, and it turns out my instincts were spot on. "You have a sister. Your parents are well off. I wonder if Caitlin could give us $5,000 as wedding money," Stacy once remarked, despite knowing I'm still in school. Fortunately, my parents stepped in. "Kate is still a student living at home. The wedding gift will be the same as ours. Maybe a little extra," they replied firmly. But my brother and Stacy weren't satisfied. "That's not fair. You're an adult now. You need to pay up." "Yeah, we're family now. It's time to step up," they insisted. To avoid any drama, I reluctantly handed over the money my parents had given me. Frankly, both my brother and Stacy seemed pretty greedy. I had hoped to keep my distance, but they kept showing up at our house despite my objections. They never missed a chance to criticize me for living at home and commuting to college. "You're still living at home. You're not planning to be a freeloader forever, are you?" I don't want a sister who's just mooching off her parents. Seriously, even if your college is nearby, it's so lame. Why don't you move out? We could save on utilities and groceries, and there'd be more inheritance left for us. My brother said all this despite having commuted from home to college himself and even having to repeat 2 years. Stacy's remarks were just as cutting. My parents are still active and healthy, but she's already talking about inheritance. It's just tactless. I've held my tongue, fearing the reactions, but things have only worsened. Now, for some reason, they're bringing their belongings into our home, despite living just 30 minutes away in a spacious apartment. "Rick, this stuff is cluttering up the place. Why bring it here? You have your own home, don't you?" Mom finally spoke up, but Rick brushed it off. "This is my home too. What's the big deal? Besides, Kane has plenty of stuff here. Kane lives here, after all." "Well, I'm also a child of this house. You shouldn't treat your children differently." "There's nothing wrong with keeping our things here. Stacy is part of my family now, so she's part of this household. Future in-laws, Rick will eventually inherit everything. Might as well get a head start, right?" They continued to disregard my parents' warnings. Then, one day, things escalated further. On a weekend morning, I awoke to the heavy footsteps echoing through the house. Burly men filled every room, following my brother and Stacy as they shuffled belongings around, clearly hired for the task. "What about this? Leave that there. But take that one away." "Got it." Following my brother's commands, the men began moving drawers that belonged to my parents and me. They even started packing up my college textbooks and other daily essentials. Hey, what's going on? Stop this right now. Well, we were hired by them, one of the movers replied nonchalantly. No matter how much I protested, they paid no heed. Even my direct complaints were met with puzzled looks directed towards my brother and Stacy. Apparently, they had been hired for a handsome sum. Before I knew it, all the essential items were loaded onto a truck parked outside without a moment's pause. Oh, Kane, leave your money. We'll put it to good use. And please take those 2 old folks with you. You can keep your wallet, at least. Don't think we're heartless. We've rented a weekly apartment for you to stay with Mom and Dad. 2 weeks' rent is already covered. Go there for now. Your belongings will be delivered there soon. What? You can't. But before I could utter another word, they escorted me and my parents out into the yard. I stood there, stunned, gazing back at the house where I had slept just moments before. Reality hit me hard. I couldn't afford to freeze in shock. I'm an adult now, not just a child needing protection from my parents. I guess I'll have to take a break from college. I'll find a part-time job to get by for now. I wonder what happened to my bank book and seal. It would have been nice if my brother had set aside some basic funds for me, but I can't dwell on it all day. The only thing to do is head to the weekly apartment they mentioned. It's okay, Dad, Mom. I'm not a kid anymore, I assured them, turning to see their stunned expressions, undoubtedly feeling betrayed by my brother. It fell to me to lift their spirits. My expectations were shattered, but in a strangely positive way, huh? When I turned back, both of them were smiling. Well, that went better than I thought, didn't it? It happened quicker than we anticipated. What? Hold on, what's going on? As it turned out, they had suspected my siblings' plan all along. Since the moment they started moving their belongings, they have foreseen a day like this. But listen, Kane, people like them won't back down no matter what you say. If anything, they'll dig in deeper when confronted with reason. Exactly, you can't confront someone like Rick directly. Let them think they've won. They'll lower their guard. That's when you strike. What? So this was all part of your plan? Their smiles widened at my question. Your dad didn't build a company from scratch for nothing. It's time to teach you some of the skills that supported him, Kane. I'll show you how to handle situations like this. They suggested we head to the weekly apartment for now. I had thought we would go straight home to confront my siblings, but apparently that wasn't the plan. Following Dad's lead, I walked with a heavy heart, pretending to be deeply discouraged. I feel like we're being followed. Don't worry, Kane. Just act like you don't notice. People like Rick and Stacy thrive on tormenting others. They'll likely report back that we seem downcast. Keep playing along, okay? Taking their advice, I headed to the apartment. Once inside, they announced with renewed energy. Most of the plan has worked. It's time to turn the tables on Rick and his crew. At Mom's signal, Dad made a call. Proceed as discussed. He was arranging with a moving company. It appeared one of Dad's trusted employees was ready to oversee the operation. Soon, movers were streaming into our home. Boss, everything is proceeding according to plan. Your son and daughter-in-law appear to be quite surprised. Well, that's to be expected. Keep going. Through the phone, there was a murmur of live updates. Apparently, Dad had briefed the movers on which items to take. The sounds of safes and other valuables being moved filled the space. What's going on? Are you barging into someone's house like this? What's the deal? Excuse me, should I call the police? No need. We're here at the homeowner's request. Hey, could you please move? You're blocking our way. Wait a minute, that's my safe with my bank book inside. Where are you taking it? Your father requested this. We're moving it to the new house. What's happening here? I was just about to open that safe. It's your father's decision. And Rick, it's quite telling that as his own son, you don't know the safe combination. Clearly, there's a lack of trust. Shut up. You're just an employee. Wait, that jewelry belongs to my mother-in-law. Why are you taking it? This is under the vice president's orders. It's also being moved to the new home. If anything happens to it, you'll be held responsible. What? Hold on, I can't afford that. Please don't interfere. About an hour later, the room fell silent and I overheard one of the employees. Mr. President, Vice President, all arrangements are complete. Apologies for disturbing you on your day off. No trouble at all, thank you. My father ended the call and turned to me. Let's head to our new home. He guided me to a mansion just as opulent as our previous one, if not more grandiose. What is this place? Our new residence. Yes, Kane, the security here is even tighter. Rick won't find it easy to gain access. And the old house? I sold it discreetly. The broker will take over tomorrow. And what about Rick and Stacy? Don't know, don't care. They might be forced out, but that house was never truly theirs. They'll manage. Exactly, Kane. We have a lot to do today with the move. We need to get everything settled by tonight. Encouraged by my parents, we all got to work. We familiarized ourselves with the layout of the new house and began organizing our rooms and living spaces. By nightfall, everything was in place. That evening, I was so exhausted that thoughts of Rick slipped away, and I fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, after a refreshing rest, my parents filled me in. They had been planning for this day since Rick got married. Rick has always been like that, and I suspected Stacy would follow suit, so I had a contingency plan in place. Moving into this house was part of it. It's a secret even from Rick, ensuring our peace here. What about Rick? I doubt they'll stay quiet after all this. You're right, Rick and his group are upset, but we have a top-notch lawyer from our company. It's clear who's in the wrong here, don't you think? Absolutely. Dad's legal advisor contacted my brother. They've been warned that any further attempts to harm us will result in a lawsuit. If that's how it's going to be, count me out. Upon hearing this, my brother abandoned his plans to seize our old home. They were left empty-handed, but that wasn't the end of it. Turns out my brother couldn't find a job after college. He was only working at Dad's company out of sympathy. There's no place for someone like you here. You're not my son anymore. Consider yourself fired. Following this incident, my brother, who lacks skills to begin with, appears to be struggling to secure new employment. Stacy, who valued money above all else, was furious. Rick, you're worthless without money? I want a divorce. She said that, and they divorced. But Stacy didn't escape consequences either. Dad spoke to Stacy's employer about the situation. They couldn't afford to keep her, especially if it meant jeopardizing a crucial client relationship. They let Stacy go with the condition that their business relationship would continue as usual. I can't believe this is happening to me. I was supposed to be the boss's wife, living the high life. All those jewels, that mansion, they were supposed to be mine. Stacy complained bitterly, but it was too late. She was left with nothing. Her family knew the situation but showed no intention of helping her. They're strange. Dad filled me in on all this. It made me realize that despite thinking I was grown up, I've been naive. There's still so much I can learn from my parents. I must keep striving to ensure I never end up like my brother or Stacy. Luckily, I still have time before graduating from college, so I'll keep working hard, following my parents' example. My son's cruel words cut through me like shards of glass. It's your fault they're calling me stinky at school. Why are you even a janitor? You stink. Stay away from me. His verbal attacks began as he neared middle school. Perhaps he was bullied because of my job. I'm Kathy Anderson, 34 years old then, and my son was just 12. My husband had passed away when our son started elementary school, leaving me to support us by taking up work at a cleaning company. Initially, my son was kind and often helped me out. But things changed in elementary school when he started facing mockery over my profession. By middle school, he began associating with unpopular kids, even getting into trouble for being out late at night. I was frequently called to the school due to his misbehavior. Being a single mother was far tougher than I had anticipated. However, by his third year in middle school, his behavior suddenly improved, and he began focusing on his studies. It seemed he had a wake-up call after seeing his friends get caught by the police for shoplifting. I don't want to live like you, scraping the bottom of the barrel. I'm going to study hard, graduate from a top university, and live an elite life with a prestigious job, he declared. Though conflicted by his words, I felt a glimmer of relief that he was finally showing ambition. My focus was on supporting his studies, and seeing him accepted into a good high school brought me great joy. He was admitted to the high school he had dreamed of. I was truly thrilled. It was a private school, and the fees were steep, but I managed, picking up extra shifts and tightening our budget. Hey, what's with this sad excuse for a meal? I need more nutritious food, you know? Get me better meat. I'm sorry. I'm doing my best, but tuition is all I can manage right now. Then work harder. You're serving me this cheap food. Are you even my parent? A parent's job is to support their child. His verbal attacks intensified in high school, perhaps fueled by the affluent backgrounds of many of his classmates. It seemed he was struggling with his own circumstances. To shield him from any shame, I cut back on my own expenses, foregoing anything for myself and funneling everything I had into supporting him. Despite his current behavior, I held on to hope that he would mature with time, recalling his kindness in elementary school. I plan to study abroad in college. I want to go for about a year, so I'll need around $30,000 to $40,000. That much. You're not going to tell me you can't afford it, right? A parent's duty is to fulfill their child's wishes. Don't use poverty as an excuse. I understand, but if you go to university, there will be more tuition to consider. How could I possibly afford the cost of studying abroad? Even now, my life was already stretched thin. So, I requested the cleaning company to switch me to an early morning shift and took up a job at a 24-hour supermarket late into the night. My schedule was packed. I worked at the cleaning company from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., then hurried home to prepare dinner, manage household chores, and headed to the supermarket from 5 p.m. to midnight. On days when the cleaning company was closed, I picked up extra shifts at the supermarket, working without a break. It was all so that my son could attend the prestigious private university he dreamed of. With only a high school diploma, I found immense joy in seeing my son go to university. By his second year, he ventured abroad for his studies. The university fees were hefty, and despite saving diligently, I had to take out a loan to cover the expenses of his study abroad. Living abroad was expensive, and I often received requests for money from my son. Despite the mounting debt, I couldn't bear to see him struggle in a foreign land, so I continued sending him financial support. After a year, he successfully completed his studies abroad, albeit delaying his college graduation by a year. My son returned home and promptly began asking for spending money again. "Hey, Derek, you're in college now. Couldn't you find a part-time job?" "Huh? You expect your child to work and miss out on having fun? Unbelievable." "I don't mean it that way, but could you try earning some of your own spending money? I'm focused on my studies. That's a student's responsibility. If I took on a part-time job, it would affect my job search after graduation. Do you want to jeopardize your child's future? As a parent, I can't understand those with limited education." I'm sorry, my son remained unchanged, but I felt relieved knowing he had safely graduated college. Landing a job at a well-regarded company lifted a weight off my shoulders. Once he began working, he stopped asking for spending money, which eased our lives. However, debts from his college and study abroad lingered, so I continued working tirelessly. After 4 years of his employment, I was nearing the end of paying off the debts. Although my son never contributed financially to the household, I managed. I once suggested he chip in a little since he lives here now, but he retorted, "You expect your child to give you money? Being a working adult means fulfilling social obligations, and it costs. You, a cleaner, and I, working at a prestigious company, are not the same." I never brought it up again. It's exhausting to argue like this every time I speak up. Maybe by then, I had grown accustomed to this life and didn't find working day and night too difficult. But unknowingly, perhaps my body was silently pleading for a break. I likely pretended not to notice. Then one day while cleaning a particular building, I spotted my son stepping out of an elevator. "Derek." Upon seeing me, my son scowled deeply. "Huh? Who are you?" "Excuse me. I don't know any old woman like you. Stop talking to me so casually, Derek. It's annoying." Being yelled at like that by my son was a huge shock. He didn't even look at me properly and quickly left. That night, after finishing my late shift and returning home, I found my son, who should have been asleep, drinking beer in the kitchen. As soon as he saw me, he began shouting as if he had been waiting for me. "Hey, old woman, what were you thinking? Why did you call out to me there? That person is a crucial business partner for my company." "Is that so? I've been cleaning that building for a long time." "What a coincidence. Look, even if you see me, don't acknowledge me. It's embarrassing if people find out my mom is a janitor. Don't embarrass me." "Embarrassing? I've been raising you like this." "What, do you think you can buy my favor with that? I didn't mean it that way. Anyway, if you see me outside, we're strangers. Don't talk to me casually. It's embarrassing for me if people find out you're my parent." It was quite a shock. I had been working tirelessly day and night for my son's sake, never expecting him to say something like this. I had hoped he would change someday, but now it seemed that day might never come. As I worked with these thoughts, I began to feel faint. When I regained consciousness, I was in a hospital bed. The doctor explained it was due to overwork. You've accumulated a lot of fatigue. You've been pushing yourself too hard, haven't you? Did I pass out? Your colleagues were concerned. They mentioned you always push yourself too hard, Mrs. I see. I ended up staying in the hospital for about a month to recover. Despite the hospital staff contacting my son, he never once visited during that time. However, my colleagues took turns visiting me, which was incredibly uplifting. The first person to rush to see me when he heard about my collapse was Mr. John Harrison. He's a kind man who always appreciates my work and shows concern for me. Having lost his wife early and raised his daughter alone, we found we had much in common and began talking frequently. You've done so well until now. I think it's time for you to take things easier, Mr. John said, and I couldn't hold back my tears. It felt like all the feelings of being overlooked and misunderstood that I had carried were finally melting away. I realized I had been trapped in the mindset of relentless hard work all this time. A month after leaving the hospital, my usual routine awaited me, but I had ceased expecting anything from my son, so I felt somewhat liberated. Though we didn't converse much, one day he informed me he was getting married. His partner was the daughter of a senior executive at the company he dealt with. That's wonderful. Well, it's only natural for someone like me. After all, I graduated from a prestigious university, studied abroad, and now work at a top-tier company. I wanted to retort, who do you think paid for all that? But I held my tongue. There was no point in arguing. It wouldn't change my son. It was futile. But you don't need to come to the wedding. Huh? It would be embarrassing to have a parent like you there, so I decided to hire someone. Rent a parent? Yes, you can even rent a family these days. If I have someone who looks wealthier than you attend as my mother, it'll reflect better on me. You're having someone else act as your mother? It's better than you attending. So that's what you think. Of course, you're not suitable for someone of my caliber. Don't show up at the wedding looking poor and lower class. Fine then, I don't care about you anymore. Once I'm married, I'm moving out of here, never coming back. Consider our ties cut. Sure, if that's what you want, I have no objections. Good, with that settled, I'll finally be free of seeing your poor face. With that, my son declared his intention to move out a week before his wedding and left. I said nothing, just watched him go. I thought everything was finally over. There was one worry I had, but I kept it to myself. Little did I know what would happen next. On the wedding day, my son called me repeatedly, like a madman. I was quite busy and initially decided not to answer, but his persistent calls left me no choice. What are you doing? Answer the phone. I'm actually busy. What's up? Isn't today your wedding day? Yes, that's why I'm calling. Come over right now. Huh? What are you saying? I'm inviting you to my wedding. Be thankful and come. And now you don't want to see a poor person like me, do you? Wouldn't it be embarrassing for you if I showed up? Enough with the excuses. Just come and witness your son in his glory. As I said, I'm busy. I don't have time for such events. Such events? Fine then, goodbye. As I moved to hang up, my son's panicked voice stopped me. Wait, do you know a man named John? He's the CEO of the company where my future father-in-law works. Why? He approached me today, smiling, saying he owes you a lot. Oh, you mean John Harrison? Yes, him. He's the guest of honor today. He said, I'm delighted that my esteemed employee's daughter is marrying Kathy's son. Oh, I know John quite well. Really? How do you know the CEO of such a big company? As I've mentioned before, I work as a cleaner in John's company, specifically in that building. John is the CEO of the building where I met my son while working there. He's an exceptional boss who values every employee, including us cleaners. We struck up a conversation when I returned something he had left at the washstand while cleaning the toilets. How did you become friends with the CEO of a major company when you're just a janitor? We discovered we're both single parents and found common ground. Then he asked, why isn't she here? He said, you wouldn't forget to invite your mother, would you? Why not introduce him to the stand-in mom? He knows what you look like. It'll blow our cover. Oh, really? It's not, oh, really? Just come over here now. I've already said I'm not going. Ever since he learned I raised my son alone, he's been quite caring and a good listener. When my son mentioned his fiancé's father's company, I was genuinely surprised. I never imagined my son would marry the daughter of an executive at John's company. I had already informed John about this and mentioned that my son had declined my invitation to the wedding. John then suggested he had a plan and asked me not to mention our connection to my son until the wedding day. "You need to come. It'll reflect badly on me if people hear how you struggled to raise me all on your own. Everyone will be saying, you should be thanking your mom." "And what about you, Derek?" "Thanking me? Are you serious? Parents raise their kids. That's their job. Why should I owe you gratitude for doing your job? But this is making me look bad. It's your responsibility as a parent to fix this. Come over and boast about what a great son I am to everyone." Hearing that just makes me want to come even less. Are you even thinking like a parent? You reap what you sow. You're not a kid anymore. Take responsibility for yourself. Parents aren't all powerful, and I'm not your parent anymore. With that, I ended the call. John was asked to give a speech as the guest of honor at the wedding. Later, he told me he gave a wonderful speech with a smile on his face. Someone recorded it, and John showed me the video. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a moment to honor Derek's mother, who single-handedly raised him day and night, and even took out loans to support his education, including study abroad. Despite his demands for money and lack of contribution at home, now a successful adult, he had the audacity to ask her not to attend his wedding, fearing embarrassment. Let's give a big round of applause to our distinguished groom. John's voice echoed loudly through the room. My son stood on stage, visibly pale. His bride, sitting beside him, flushed red and trembled. In a sudden motion, she grabbed a wine bottle and poured it over my son's head. "You ungrateful fool!" Her voice rang out, filled with anger. Clutching her dress, she stormed out of the room. The guests erupted into a chorus of disapproval, leaving my son standing soaked in wine, tears, and snot, his white tuxedo stained and ruined. Seeing him in that state stirred nothing in me. It felt like watching a surreal play that had nothing to do with my life. Naturally, the wedding was canceled. With many guests from the company and clients in attendance, news of the ceremony's debacle spread rapidly. I heard he started receiving icy glares both inside and outside the office. Eventually, he resigned due to the hostile environment. The wedding details went viral on social media, making it difficult for him to find another job after his bride left. He couldn't afford the rent for their new home and was reportedly evicted. About a month later, I received a call from a public phone. "Mom, where are you right now?" "Who's calling?" "I don't recall having a son who calls me Mom." "It's me, Garrick." "Ah, I remember someone by that name from years ago. What's the matter?" "It's all my fault. Please help me. I don't have a job, can't pay off the wedding expenses, and I have nowhere to live." When I returned home, you weren't there. Someone else had moved in. "Oh, I've relocated from our old place. Remember, your wedding day was moving day for me. That's why I mentioned being busy." "Where did you move to?" "There's no reason for me to disclose that. You're a stranger now." "I'm living in a park." "A park? Are you homeless now?" "Yes, I'm getting by collecting cans." "You, who once looked down on janitors, are now collecting cans? How unfortunate. Do you feel any remorse for me?" "Not at all. We're no longer family. Please don't reach out to me again. Goodbye." With that, I ended the call. He never contacted me again after that. Perhaps he couldn't afford to make calls anymore, but that wasn't my concern. I had no desire to see him or be involved in his life again. Later, I married John. His daughter, who had already married and moved out, was delighted about our marriage. Now, just the two of us are looking forward to living our second lives happily together as a couple.